Welcome to Nyma Stories, where every tale touches the heart. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that inspires. Now, let's begin. On an early April morning in Chicago, the air carried its characteristic chill, mingling with the rich aroma of coffee drifting from a small corner cafe. Pale dawn light filtered through the weathered apartment blocks, gilding the dew-dappled pavement. Along the cobblestone street heavy with memories of youth, Walter Jones, gaunt and limping with each step supported by his worn wooden cane, made his way slowly toward Mayfield's pastry shop. His canvas backpack sagged on one shoulder, crumpled much like the rugged course of his own life. On his left wrist, gleaming in the soft morning light, was a solid gold Rolex day date, its face inscribed with a single line. To Dad, you showed me how to dream. Deshaun. It was the only gift from his son, tech mogul Deshaun Jones, given on the day Deshaun had conquered the business world. Walter handled the watch tenderly, his trembling fingers tracing the polished gold as if touching the milestone of their shared journey. Mayfield's was only a few steps from his front door. Inside, slanted sunlight danced across the display of freshly baked pastries. Walter tapped his cane against the concrete floor and offered a toothless grin when the owner, a young Mexican-American girl named Maria, greeted him in her endearing accent. "Mr. Jones, you're here early again. The apple pastry, same as always?" "Yeah, the apple pastry. And a cup of black coffee, Maria." He leaned his cane against the wall and settled into a chair. The warmth rising from his coffee mingled with a hint of cinnamon on the breeze. It was an uncommonly peaceful morning, as if the suffering of years past were nothing but a fable he had survived. Walter gazed out the window, eyes awash with memory. In his youth, he had worked as a restaurant helper, hauled trash at night, and washed dishes for pennies. Every day was a struggle to survive. His wife had died young, leaving him to raise their only child alone. The child's cries haunted his restless nights, robbing him of sleep. Yet in those darkest hours, he nurtured a single hope, that one day his son would escape the shadow of poverty. Now, staring at the Rolex, Deshaun's gift, Walter saw more than a luxury timepiece. It symbolized boundless love, years of nameless sacrifice, and every drop of sweat he shed on these very sidewalks. He let out a soft chuckle and whispered to himself, "Finally, my little fool has shown he wasn't born just to endure." After leaving the bakery, Walter trudged another few hundred feet to a narrow alley beside the old church. The passage was deserted, its cracked brick walls mottled with moss. He leaned forward, sniffing the damp air, then planted his cane and proceeded gingerly. Despite his care, each shuffled step echoed sharply in the quiet. Halfway through, a shadow detached itself from the gloom behind him. The man was lean and quick, dressed in faded clothes, his baseball cap pulled low. His eyes flicked to the Rolex's flash under the sun, and he curled his lips in a mocking grin. Before Walter could react, a rough hand seized his wrist and yanked. In an instant, the robber ripped off the watch and shoved Walter to the hard pavement. Walter's cane snapped and clattered across the alley. He groaned in pain as the thief laughed, shoving him aside and dashing back toward the bustling street. Walter struggled upright, eyes blurred with agony. The precious gift his son had given him snatched away in an instant. Meanwhile, on Montgomery Avenue, two white officers patrolled the beat. Officer Carl Hunter, corpulent and weary, fiddled with his radio headset and grumbled. "Almost lunchtime, and we're still on patrol. This neighborhood's boring. Just a bunch of old people." Behind him, Officer Mark Benson, younger, fit, his uniform scuffed from past scuffles, replied seriously, There's always something. It's our job to check it out. Suddenly, a distant cry echoed from the alley. Carl squinted. An old black man screaming? Lost his watch. Whatever, probably a cheap knockoff. He turned away, stuffing his hands in his pockets, ready to move on, until Mark whipped out his service pistol and spun on his heel. Carl, stop. That's a robbery. Carl sighed dramatically, rolling his eyes. Hold on, let me finish my snack first. Without stopping to argue further, Mark sprinted into the alley, leaving Carl dumbfounded in the street. Carl reluctantly followed the protocol to enter the alley. But when he saw Walter sprawled on the bricks, his broken cane beside him and the genuine Rolex lying a few feet away, he merely smirked. Not my problem. He turned on his heel and walked off, abandoning Mark to his lone pursuit of the robber through the city. Mark thundered through crowded streets, catching glimpses of the Rolex's golden flash as the thief darted among pedestrians. The robber vaulted a low wall into a market of crowded stalls. Mark kept pace, then seized the man from behind, pinning him to the ground. His pistol remained trained on the suspect as he ordered. Let go! The robber thrashed, but Mark's grip was iron. At last the Rolex slipped from the man's grasp, skidding toward Mark's outstretched hand. Mark picked it up, staring at the dial engraved with Deshawn. He felt the weight of its significance. This wasn't just another watch. His heart pounded as memories of his own father, a worn-out auto mechanic, surfaced. He couldn't shake the sting of Carl's earlier indifference. The heavy iron door of the police precinct creaked open, ushering Mr. Walter Jones into the half-empty reception area. This was the Chicago Police Department's North Side precinct, a place that, over the years, had seen countless minor crimes and people of all walks of life pass through its doors. Officer Mark Benson guided the old man to a waiting bench, then swiftly summoned a nurse and an investigator to assist. Mark gently cleaned the scrape on Walter's knee with sterile gauze. His hands were warm and his movements careful, touching the old man's heart. Maria, the young Latin nurse with her hair tied high, offered Walter a cup of spring water and a soft towel. Are you all right, sir? Is the pain easing? She asked kindly. Walter gave a slight, grateful smile. Thank you, child. It just hurts a bit. But what about the watch? He bowed his head, a flicker of sorrow in his eyes as he spoke of the Rolex day date that had slipped from his wrist. Mark had carefully wrapped the watch in a paper box and placed it on a small table in front of Walter. Here you go, Mark said warmly. Walter's hands trembled as he took the box, opened it, and let the golden gleam of the watch illuminate his weathered face. Sitting opposite him, Mark furrowed his brow. Sir, could you tell me why you're wearing this Rolex? He asked. Walter looked up, his eyes shining. My son Deshawn gave it to me after he built his company. He bought hundreds of apartments, launched countless tech projects, but he said this watch proves the sweat his old man poured into his dreams. Mark was speechless. He thought of his own father, a mechanic who spent his life elbow-deep in grease and never received a word of praise. Through Walter's words, he now understood the depth of a father's love. Not just blood ties, but a journey of sacrifice and nurturing dreams. Just then, the door to the interview room creaked open, and a television reporter with rosy cheeks and a small camera entered. Officer Benson, I'm Emily Reyes from Chicago Evening News. We heard about the Rolex robbery with Deshawn engraved on it. Can I get a few words from you? Mark hesitated. He hadn't informed his superiors that Deshawn was a high-profile figure. But Emily looked at him earnestly. We want to share a message of courage and show that the police stand with citizens, she said. After a moment's thought, Mark nodded. All right, but only with Mr. Jones's permission. Walter looked at the reporter and offered a gentle smile. I'm not used to being on TV, but if my story can inspire someone, I'm willing, he said. Emily brightened and lifted her microphone toward Walter. "Mr. Jones, could you share how you felt when you were robbed and why this watch means so much to you?" Walter inhaled deeply and spoke slowly. "I can lose everything, my health, my money, but I never want to lose my faith. This watch reminds me of my poor boy's days of hunger and tears, and how he became my pride. I wear it to remind myself to live up to that love." The camera zoomed in on his lined face, capturing each crease and the clear, tear-bright glimmer in his eyes. Mark stood quietly by, feeling his chest tighten. After the interview, Mark and his colleagues filed the incident report, confirmed the robber's identity, recorded the case number, and scheduled the suspect's prosecution. It was routine procedure, yet this case was different. The victim was not just any citizen, but the father of a titan of industry. When Carl Hunter was summoned to report, he remained indifferent. He was just an old, bedraggled man. "I figured someone stealing an old piece of jewelry wasn't worth my time," he told his superior. Lieutenant Grayson, the head of investigations, raised an eyebrow. "You work here to protect all citizens, not just those of high value. Next time you want a lunch break, submit it properly." Carl stammered, his face flushing as he looked down in shame. That evening's news broadcast featured the headline, "Chicago billionaire's father robbed of Rolex. Young officer to the rescue at noon." Social media lit up with praise for Mark and outpourings of emotion for Walter's story. Mark scrolled through the comments, seeing countless shares of the tale of a father and son overcoming hardship, affirming that kindness still exists. A thought struck him. This inspiration could become something greater than a news article. Later that afternoon, while Mark rested in his warm office, his phone buzzed. On the other end was a familiar voice, Deshaun Jones. "Hello, Officer Benson. I'm Deshaun. Walter's son. I want to thank you for rescuing my father's watch and his dignity." Mark nearly jumped from his chair. I just did what was right," he stammered. Deshaun continued, "I'd like to meet you, not as a police officer, but as someone who helped my family. Are you available?" Mark nodded in disbelief, his heart pounding. He had helped one man and unexpectedly opened a door to the son of a powerful family. He hung up, sunlight filtering through the office window, casting a peaceful glow. Yet ahead lay a new journey, a fateful meeting with Deshaun and plans to build a community project to help other Walter figures, people full of resolve but lacking a voice. Mark whispered to himself, "I won't just be an enforcer. I'll be a bridge of hope." Late afternoon, the sunset painted Chicago's skyline in rosy hues, reflecting off the glass facades of the Future Spark Tower like ribbons of light. Officer Mark Benson stood in front of the building's grand lobby, his tie slightly askew after a long day's work, a mix of excitement and nerves swirling in his chest. This was his first time inside the headquarters of an international tech powerhouse, the very place run by Deshaun Jones, the billionaire whose father he had rescued, Walter Jones. The transparent elevator whisked Mark up to the 42nd floor, where a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the gently flowing Chicago River. When the doors slid open, Mark stifled a gasp of wonder. Everything was impeccably pristine, modern, yet warmly inviting. At the far end of the room, beside a round table draped in crisp white linen, stood a tall, lean man in an elegant suit, Deshaun Jones. Deshaun bowed his head in greeting, his eyes reflecting the calm confidence of someone who had weathered countless storms. He offered Mark a welcoming smile and gestured to the chair across from him. "Officer Benson, thank you for coming," he said in a warm voice tinged with a Chicago accent. "My father has told me everything. You didn't just save his watch, you preserved his dignity." Mark nodded, swallowing his nerves. "Sir, I was just doing my job." but it's a great honor to meet you. Deshawn placed a small wooden box on the table. Inside lay the Rolex day date that Mark had carefully recovered after the mugging. My father asked me to give this to you, Deshawn said, opening the box. Mark's eyes widened. Not only was the watch itself gleaming, but engraved on its back was Walter's name and the heartfelt message his son had inscribed. You don't have to, Mark stammered. I can't accept something so valuable. Deshawn smiled. You show me a different side of justice. My father always told me, true power isn't in money. It's in the actions of the heart. You prove that. After a long pause, Mark reached out and took the gift. Thank you. I'll treasure it as a reminder. The room fell into a respectful silence. Deshawn retrieved a leather-bound folder and spread its contents across the table. Planned for the Walter Foundation, a charity established in his father's name to support the elderly, the disabled, and those in need throughout Chicago. We want to turn my father's story into concrete action, Deshawn explained. The Walter Foundation will fund wheelchairs, home repairs, hot meals, and, most importantly, establish Golden Year Centers for lonely seniors. Mark scanned the documents, budget charts, a 12-month rollout schedule, even a map covering 5 city districts. He was struck by the scope and professionalism. You've planned this in incredible detail. Deshawn nodded. I want it to be sustainable and serious. You understand life on the streets and the real needs of people. I'd like you to serve as our director of strategy, overseeing community outreach. A charged silence followed. Mark wondered, a police officer turning into a nonprofit leader. Do I have what it takes? Deshawn looked him squarely in the eye. You're more than a cop. You showed courage when your partner turned away. You understand compassion better than anyone. I need your steadfastness and your heart. Mark bowed his head, recalling his own father, a worn-out repairman left alone after his mother's death. He'd always struggled to help him, limited to cold dinners and hurried phone calls between shifts. Now, this opportunity offered a chance not only to help others, but to heal wounds in his own soul. I accept, Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. I want to do something for all the Walter Joneses out there, fathers and mothers who've sacrificed in silence. Deshawn's face brightened. He extended his hand. Then let's begin today. Moments later, they descended to the ground floor auditorium, already set up with tables and chairs for community partners. Nonprofits, doctors, journalists, and volunteer artists waited eagerly. A banner reading, Walter Foundation Kickoff, spreading hope, stretched across the stage. Deshawn tapped the microphone. Welcome, everyone. Today we sow the seeds so that our city's disabled and elderly need never worry about meals, mobility, or the ache of loneliness. I hope every heart here becomes a child of the Walter Foundation. Thunderous applause filled the room. Mark stood off to the side, tears welling in his eyes as he watched the joyous faces of people in wheelchairs, dedicated volunteers, and finally Walter Jones himself, guided onto the stage to cut the ribbon alongside his son and Mark. When the ceremony ended, Walter escorted Mark out onto the building's marble terrace, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars. Thank you, son, he whispered. I'm so proud of you. Mark realized in that moment that he had redefined more than just the role of a police officer. He had ignited a movement. He smiled back. We will change many lives, Dad. Far below, the Future Spark Tower gleamed against the night sky, a beacon guiding lonely and disabled souls toward hope. And in Mark's heart, he understood for the first time that his life's mission had entered a bold new chapter, one of challenge, purpose, and profound meaning. Daybreak had just broken over the Chicago sky when a Walter Foundation convoy rolled out from the Future Spark Tower headquarters. In the banner-adorned truck marked Spreading Hope, Officer Mark Benson sat in his blue and white uniform, Beside him his father, Mr. Walter, draped in a light jacket, and Maria, the nurse from Mayfield's bakery, along with 5 other volunteers. The air was thick with morning haze, but everyone's spirits were high for their very first field survey. Their first stop was a weathered wooden house in Irving Park. The creaking iron gate announced their arrival before they saw Agnes Thompson. Well into her 80s, hair a shock of silver, her frail frame hunched in a worn armchair on the porch steps. Her eyes, shadowed with memory, gazed down the empty street. When she spotted the volunteers, a gentle smile flickered across her face, though her eyes betrayed a hint of hesitation. "Hello. I hope I'm not bothering anyone," she asked softly. Maria hurried forward with a chair, whispering, "Mrs. Thompson, we're here to install a ramp so you can come and go more easily, and to bring you some hot meals." As the crew secured a sturdy wooden ramp from the yard to her front door, Mark knelt beside her. "How long have you been living alone?" he inquired. Agnes cleared her throat and clutched her handkerchief. "My husband passed 10 years ago, and my son died serving in Iraq. Since then, I've had no one to lean on." Her voice broke, and tears slipped down her wrinkled cheeks. Maria swiftly offered her a tissue, and Walter quietly laid a comforting hand on her shoulder, his own legs trembling slightly. "Agnes, you're not alone. We are your new family." The old woman gripped his hand, her eyes filling with tears as she whispered, Thank you, children." Leaving Agnes's home, the team headed to Pilsen, home to Chicago's vibrant Mexican community. At the end of a narrow alley, they found Julio Ramirez, about 65, his gaze steely but weary. Once a master carpenter, Parkinson's disease had robbed his hands of their skill. Mark and Maria helped him tidy his small living room, while the technical team installed safety rails and grips in his hallway. Julio looked up, voice thick with emotion. "I still want to build a beautiful cabinet for my grandson, but my hands won't obey me." Walter bent forward, eyes misty. "You were Pilsen's finest craftsman. Don't let illness defeat you." Maria pulled a few mariachi tunes from her pocket and softly played them. Soon the whole team was dancing in the small space. Julio managed a tender smile and nodded. For a moment, I felt alive again. By late afternoon, the truck reached Bronzeville, where Tamika Johnson, 28, awaited them. A year earlier, she'd been a champion sprinter, until a car accident stole her ability to walk. Her empty apartment was lined with medals and certificates, painful reminders of a glorious past. Mark wheeled in a state-of-the-art wheelchair as Maria presented Tamika with a warm sweater embroidered with a Walter Foundation logo. Tamika's eyes widened at the sight of assistive equipment, wheelchair, anti-tip rods, reading lamp. Then she gasped, I don't know what to say." Tears flowed freely as Mark gently took her hand. "Dreams don't vanish. They just take new shapes. We'll help you train in IT so you can find meaningful work." Walter placed a blank notebook in her lap. "Write down every dream. We'll make them happen, together." After 3 visits, the group paused under a grand old oak in a nearby park. Agnes's tears of relief, Julio's tentative laughter, and Tamika's hopeful smile were etched into everyone's hearts. Mark sat beside Walter, watching his father close his eyes, a mix of joy and emotion softening his features. "Dad," Mark whispered, "let's do something special for them." Walter opened his eyes and nodded, voice tremulous. "I think a small celebration, music, dancing, and handing out these supports would mean so much." Mark grinned. "Next time we'll host a true Golden Years Day." Night had fallen by the time the truck returned to headquarters. On the drive back, Maria turned to Mark. "Do you think this will change you forever?" Mark was silent for a moment, gazing at the empty streets. "On patrol, I learned to catch criminals. Now I see I can touch lives by caring and listening. A social work student volunteer, Lynn, grabbed his hand. You showed me what real service means. I want to stay involved for the long haul. Mark met her eyes, resolve shining. We won't stop here. Later that night, during the debrief, Deshaun Jones joined via video call, watching images from the day's visits. He saw Agnes's bright laughter, Julio's Latin dance steps, and Tamika's inspired eyes. A contented smile spread across his face. This is only the beginning. I think our first center should be in Northside, where Agnes lives. Walter looked at his son, then at Mark. You and Mark are our trailblazers. I believe you'll create miracles. Under the pale glow of the hospital lights, Carl Hunter lay on the bed, his body weakened by end-stage kidney failure. His face was ashen, his legs swollen, and despite 3 4-hour dialysis sessions each week, he felt himself slipping away. No amount of police training could save him now. His life depended entirely on a single kidney from another person. One weekend night, after a long shift, Carl stumbled down the stairs at the precinct. His knees seized up, his heart pounded wildly, and by the time he reached home, he collapsed on the floor, limbs numb. The hallway light revealed him drenched in sweat. The next morning's blood tests were a shock. His creatinine level was 5 times normal, and his kidney function had plunged to just 10%. His doctor delivered the verdict. He needed urgent dialysis and must join the transplant waiting list immediately. Lying in the cold, sterile ward, Carl's mind drifted back 2 months to a patrol in the Englewood slums. He had scolded a lanky young black man, Jamal Robinson, who was begging for a few dollars to buy dinner for his little sister. Get a job if you want money, Carl barked. Then he walked away, convinced it was none of his business. Now, bedridden and alone, Carl wondered how many Jamals he had dismissed with contempt. He felt a hollow ache inside as he called Mark Benson. I need someone to talk to. Mark arrived the next day as Carl began his first emergency dialysis. Standing by his bedside, Mark asked gently, "How are you holding up?" Carl forced a smile. "It's uncertain." Mark vowed, "We'll find you a matching kidney." The team at Walter Foundation, Deshaun Jones, Walter Sr., and Maria, all rallied to help. They posted internal bulletins calling for donors, but everyone who applied was disqualified by age, blood type, or health issues. It looked hopeless until one morning the transplant coordinator knocked on Carl's door. "Mr. Hunter, we have a matching donor. Please prepare." Carl's heart leapt. "Who is it?" The coordinator replied, "A 26-year-old man from the Englewood slums. He's volunteered his kidney and wants to meet you." Later, Mark rolled Carl's wheelchair into the meeting room. As the curtain parted, Carl froze. Standing there was Jamal Robinson, the same young man Carl had berated, wearing a simple blue T-shirt branded with a Walter Foundation logo and eyes shining with resolve. "Hello, Officer Hunter," Jamal said quietly. "I heard you needed a kidney. I want to help because, even though you arrested me, you didn't send me away." Carl stammered, Why would you do this?" Jamal smiled softly. "I have an extra kidney, and I owe my life to Walter Foundation. Now I want to give back." In the operating theater, bright surgical lights glared as doctors and nurses prepared their instruments. Carl lay on the table, heart racing, whispering, "Thank you, Jamal." Beside him, Jamal was anesthetized but managed to murmur his last words, "Stay strong, so you can help others." After 5 tense hours, the machines fell silent. The chief surgeon emerged, beaming. "It's a success. Mr. Hunter, you're alive again." Days later, Carl was moved to a recovery room. Summoning his strength, he hobbled over to Jamal's bed. Jamal opened his eyes weakly and asked, "You feeling better?" Carl gripped Jamal's hand, tears welling. "Thank you, Jamal. I was wrong to look down on you." Jamal managed a faint smile. We're all born equal. Saving someone's life is worth any risk. Tears streamed down Carl's cheeks as he silently vowed, I'll live for your sacrifice. I'll fight for justice, no matter a person's background. Not long after, the Chicago Police Department held a ceremony honoring Jamal, the civilian kidney donor. The sight of Jamal receiving a silent hero badge beside Carl, in full uniform, left the assembly speechless. Carl took the microphone, voice shaking. I once viewed the poor with contempt. Today I've learned they often have the biggest hearts. I humbly thank Jamal Robinson. Thunderous applause followed. Carl knew then that his duty extended beyond arresting criminals. He would now champion the disadvantaged. That very evening, Carl joined Mark and Jamal at a planning meeting for the upcoming Golden Year's Day event. Carl clasped Jamal's hand, once a face he scorned, now his brother in humanity, and whispered, Let's make this world a better place. Far above, Chicago's skyline glittered like a field of stars, each light a soul touched by kindness. Between these two men, from opposite ends of life's spectrum, a single act of generosity had woven a new thread of hope for all. Early that morning, the small stadium in Lincoln Park was festooned in celebration for the inaugural Golden Day. Flags, balloons, and banners reading Walter Foundation, spreading hope, fluttered in the early summer breeze. By 8 a.m., hundreds of elderly people with disabilities, single parents, and orphaned youth had gathered. Among them Agnes, Julio, and Tamika, plus many others who'd already received help. Mark Benson and the volunteers bustled at the entrance, checking tickets, handing out tokens for gifts and refreshments, while Maria directed the mobile medical team. Carl Hunter, dressed in a crisp shirt, stood beside Jamal, the kidney donor, presenting each guest with a fresh sunflower as a symbol of new beginnings. Carl's eyes glistened with emotion. The once aloof officer had now become greeter, supporter, and protector. At exactly 9 a.m., mariachi music swelled and Walter Jones, the foundation's honorary chairman, stepped onto the stage. Thin but resolute, leaning on his cane, he wore a satisfied smile. Holding the microphone, his voice trembled with pride. Today, I am no longer the anonymous father. I am Walter Jones, one who survived hunger and tasted loneliness, only to learn that a smile, a warm meal, a friend at your side are the greatest gifts. Thank you, my children, warriors of the Walter Foundation, for keeping the flame of hope alive. The crowd erupted into applause, many wiping tears away. Deshaun Jones joined him on stage, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. You have always been my inspiration. Together, we will spread this faith to every corner of the city. Next, Agnes was invited up to share. Before today, I only knew loneliness and regret. Now, I feel reborn, thanks to those who came to clean my home, to the laughter and music. I want to thank Mark, Maria, and every volunteer. You showed me that old age need not mean solitude. Then Julio, the carpenter, and Tamika, the former athlete, spoke of their journeys. Julio regaining joy through dance, Tamika retraining in IT thanks to the foundation's classes. Every applause, every smile bore witness to the power of compassion. At the program's close, Carl Hunter was called to the stage. Though his legs still trembled, his eyes shone with sincerity. I once turned away from those in need, seeing them with contempt rather than empathy. Jamal Robinson, standing beside me, gave his kidney so I could live on. Through him, I learned what forgiveness means. I promised to be a fair officer, to protect every citizen, and to stand with the Walter Foundation in every step forward. Jamal gently placed a hand on Carl's shoulder as soft drums played. Carl, no matter where we come from, We are family in one heart. Immediately afterward, Deshawn invited everyone to approach a small memorial altar, where a plaque read, Walter Foundation Donor Heroes. Engraved among the names was Jamal Robinson's, under the title The Unsung Hero. Many in the audience were moved to tears as they read it, feeling the profound impact of a simple yet powerful act. Leaning toward Mark, Deshawn whispered, "See how small acts of kindness join to form a mighty river." Mark nodded, understanding that their mission extended far beyond this single day. The event closed with a group dance, Latin rhythms blended with jazz, turning the stadium into a joyful celebration. Agnes and Tamika swayed lightly. Julio strummed his guitar, and Mark led the volunteers in a vibrant circle. Carl and Jamal danced slowly together, embodying the reconciliation of two souls once worlds apart. As night fell and the stage lights dimmed, Walter, Deshawn, Mark, Carl, and Jamal stood in an embrace before the crowd. Resentment, indifference, and loneliness melted away, replaced by an unwavering faith in the strength of community. That night, they gathered around a small campfire, sharing bread and roasted chestnuts, dreaming of future golden days in every Chicago neighborhood.